What if the future of poverty disruption depends on leaders finally coming together, not just to talk about problems, but to redesign systems? Good morning, and welcome to Disrupting Poverty Through Leadership that Delivers AM Talk Show. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey, and today's conversation is deeply personal, visionary, and action driven. Because we're talking about leadership, systems change, Agenda 2030, and the upcoming From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit 2026. This is more than a conference, it's a movement building experience designed to move vision into impact and impact into action. Today's episode is entitled From Poverty to Prosperity, Building a National Leadership Movement for Systems Change. Agenda 2030 in Action. The From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit 2026 will take place Saturday, October 3rd in Baltimore County, Maryland, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now, this summit is intentionally designed for policymakers, executive leaders, educators, workforce professionals, community advocates, emerging change makers, researchers, and innovators. Because disrupting poverty requires cross-sector leadership, systems level thinking, and sustainable collaboration. Let's begin with the core question. Why does this summit matter right now? One of the most important messages connected to the summit is this: poverty is not simply an individual issue, and poverty is not a systems issue. And if poverty is systemic, that means leadership must be systemic, solutions must be systemic, accountability must be systemic. Recently, a community invested heavily in isolated programs, such as workforce programs, education programs, housing support. But because these systems were disconnected, families still struggled to sustain progress. And the truth of the matter is simple: programs alone do not disrupt poverty. We can't operate in silo and come together for a systemic solution. But when programs work in collaboration, systems begin to align. And when there's an alignment, there's success. And this is exactly why Agenda 2030 becomes critical. Now, the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit 26 strongly aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, specifically SDG 1, which is no poverty. And again, SDG means Sustainable Development Goal. So SDG 1, no poverty. SDG 4, quality education. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. SDG 10, reduce inequalities. In SDG 17, partnerships for the goals, Agenda 2030 makes something very clear, and that is sustainable change cannot happen through isolated leadership. It requires shared accountability, cross sector partnership, and long term systems transformation. And as the founder and visionary of the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit, we hit on all these areas. Shared accountability, the lineup is phenomenal. The cross sector partnership is unlike any summit ever before. And long term systems transformation, creating these pipelines from inception through the aging process. And having to bring it all together through these cross sector partnerships has been the most daunting yet rewarding to date. Because for me, it's not just about jobs or credit or banking or education. All of those factors, individually and collectively, contribute to solutions for Agenda 2030 and addressing poverty. And they're also all hindrances to that as well. So when we're thinking about sustainable change, these three factors, shared accountability, cross sector partnerships, and long term systems transformation, are ideally intricate and intertwined, interwoven, and ideally important. And this summit is intentionally built around these ideas through executive panels. I am all but excited to have the first four or the first 3 to 4 coming from the state level to be a part of this leadership summit. The the Phenomenal, right? Policy decisions or discussions, cross sector collaboration, which again for me is the caveat to all things systemic and pipeline oriented, and action focused leadership sessions. And when done right, will really have an impact on those that are currently there, whether they are part of the panel, part of the policy discussions, the cross sector collaborations. Because when people are outside of their norm and outside of their role, they tend to learn things differently. And you can still be in the same agency and be clueless, right? And not clueless as in a negative, but clueless as in you don't know. So imagine when you're bringing in people from various sectors, one that are hard to get a hold of, and two that are typically not in the room, but then other people that are in the room that you really can learn new things from. That's where the magic happened. And that's the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit. Like, it is going to be phenomenal. So this is not a leadership theater. This is a leadership architect, right? And I'm super excited to be the visionary and founder of this, because in today's time, even before who was voted in a last election, and long after um, this current, not just administration, but those that are currently serving are no longer, then we got to pick up these pieces, right? To all of these things that have happened over hundreds of years, but have been dismantled in the last less than 18 months. It's going to take cross sector leadership, shared responsibility, and action focused leadership sessions to really start piecing things back together. And so it's going to be direly important. So the big question is, what makes this summit different from traditional conferences? And the summit message is clearing. It's not a traditional conference because too many events create inspiration without implementation. And this summit is designed for actionable strategies off the back. Panel one, right? Real world systems discussion off the back. Workshop one. Policy focused leadership dialogue. Having that many experts in the room, leaders from different areas, different sectors, different backgrounds. That's the leadership dialogue that's needed. And from there, that's when a connection happens, right? That's when a networking takes place, and um, the cross conversations begin to take off. And collaborative solution building, that sounds good in theory, but it's very rare to have people from various backgrounds and areas of expertise that are typically not drawn together in the same room to really allow that collaboration discussion to begin. But at the From Poverty to Prosperity Summit, it's going to happen. Recently an educator, a workforce leader, and a policymaker sat at the same table discussing barriers to economic mobility. Well, man, that sounds like the summit, and we're not even there yet. But instead of operating separately, they align strategy along shared outcomes because that's what an educator, a workforce leader, and a policymaker would do, right? They work in different backgrounds from a silo perspective, but when they come together, economic mobility topic, there are barriers across the board. And this is how systems begin to change. Transformation happens when sectors stop competing and start collaborating. And leading up to and on the day of the summit, that is what these individuals that are going to take part will continue and begin doing. And I'm so excited behind that. And leadership development must include emerging leaders, not just established voices. And so emerging leaders are not just those new entry into that organization. We're talking grad student, undergrad students, we're talking high school students, we're talking middle school students, we're talking those that are caught in the middle of transition. All of those people are a part of the emerging leaders. And so, out of the most important elements of the summit is the intentional inclusion of the students and emerging leaders. Close that refrigerator, please. Because Agenda 2030 is not only about current leadership, it is about preparing future leadership. So, having our youth and young adults sitting on panels, having our youth and young adults as a part of the discussion in the room is extremely important. And the summit include opportunities such as student engagement, youth leadership development, networking access, exposure to policymakers and executive leaders. A young emerging leader attended a leadership convening and gained direct access to professionals and mentors they otherwise would not have encountered. And that exposure changed their trajectory, as it should, because now this individual was in the room that they would most likely not be invited to. And so leadership pipelines matter because when an established leader can put a young and emerging leader in an audience, positive, impressed, conversations, dress well, that's a game changer, right? And that's what it's about. So that's why leadership pipelines matter. And another major focus of the summit is systems level collaboration. What does that mean, Dr. Dorsey? I'm glad you asked. This summit emphasizes cross sector collaboration and innovation. Did you catch that? This summit emphasizes cross sector collaboration and innovation because no single institution can disrupt poverty alone. None. Real transformation requires government partnerships, which this summit has, educational institutions, which this summit has, workforce systems, which this system has, nonprofit collaboration, which which this summit has, and community-centered leadership. Go ahead and say it. Which this summit has. And featured speakers include leaders connected to Maryland Department of Social and Economic Mobility. And let me pause there for a second. The Maryland Department of Social and Economic Mobility, if you are a business owner, an emerging business owner, anybody in business, this is your Bible. Like anything for certification, anything that you need to grow your business, any person you need to be related to, that's that department. I happened to sign up for once the secretary of the Maryland Department of Economic and Social Economic Mobility decided to be a part of the summit. Somehow or another, I got on their email list. Okay, that's fine. Works for me, right? So I signed up for these webinars that they had coming up. And so, I'm sitting at work and I'm listening to the webinar and I'm stopping like, oh, snap. I didn't know. Because whatever, but now I'm sitting here looking at it, right? And my business is forever receiving solicitations through the Maryland Marketplace, e-Maryland Marketplace, and government contracts is what I want to get to, and state contracts. And I'm already a vendor for, like a state agency. So I want to kind of grow, my connections. And I'm thinking like, snap, that's it. The Maryland Department of Social and Economic Mobility. So all these groups on Facebook, which are great, and people like, hey, let me do this for you and that for you. And I'm thinking to myself, y'all about to get swindled. Y'all asking the wrong people. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to be in a Facebook group where people have experience, but the Maryland Department or Alabama State or Washington, D.C. or Ohio or Delaware or Pennsylvania has a Department of Economic and Social and Economic Mobility. People, that is the place to go. Anyway, so featured speakers include the Secretary for the Maryland Department of Social and Economic Mobility, Maryland State Leadership, higher education, workforce systems, and public policies. Boom. Dropping stuff up over here. Boom. Spoon drop, right? Because partnerships accelerate impact when leadership aligns around measurable outcomes. That's a die-hard lineup right there. So, and finally, this summit is about legacy leadership, right? And people identify legacy in so many ways, and typically not with leadership. But this summit is about legacy leadership. The From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit is not just about one day. It is about building a long-term leadership ecosystem. All right, now we about to break out into science and all of this other stuff, right? Because ecosystem is what we learn in science, but ecosystem is what we live in currently. And if you're not creating an ecosystem around your business or for your family or your finances, then you're already failing, right? Because you cannot just or should not just look at an individual program or service or whatever and go like, boom, that's it. No, it's not. That is literally a piece of the puzzle. Building an ecosystem means that whenever it's in rotation, it's going to keep going, right? Like a hamster wheel that's running on the what's the name, and they're going. And even though the hamster might stop and eat, it's going to get up and keep going, right? Because that is an ecosystem that is related to everything that keeps it keep it going. So a long-term leadership ecosystem goes back to that cross sector, shared collaboration, and long-term impact. Not a one and done, not a one off, like Milli Vanilli. We're talking like decades, like James Earl Jones decades, right? And that's the ecosystem. So an ecosystem focused on like economic mobility, boom, check. Workforce transformation, boom, check. Leadership development, boom, check. Sustainable systems change, boom, check. Generational impact, boom, check. And one that is most often left out, disability transition services, boom, check, check, check. And why is that important? That's even more important than economic mobility, workforce transformation, leadership development, sustainable systems change, and general impact, because we have so many youth and adults and older adults dealing with some type of disability in the world that oftentimes they are left out of the conversation, whether it's entry, growth, upscaling, or just we're not thinking about them, and we can't leave them out. And I'm not talking just the old and aging. I'm talking about viable people that are willing and able and interested, but left out of the conversation because no one thinks of them after the K-12 graduation, and that's a problem. So including that population. So leadership should outlive the room it was spoken in. And from the Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit, leadership will outlive the room it was spoken in, because it's going to be fire. So let's bring this into action, because we know we love what? You got it, a leadership challenge. So here's your leadership challenge. Identify one system in your community that requires stronger collaboration. And it should be simple for you as a leader, as a business owner, an aspiring business owner, as a supervisor, a manager, even a frontline employee, even as a student, right? Identify a system in your community that requires stronger collaboration, right? Then commit to participating in more leadership and policy conversations. And this is the hard part, because depending on how you carry yourself or what you look like or what your interests are, you might not be invited to the discussion or to the table or in a room. Invite yourself. Connect with a person that know a person that you find out about something and show up. Showing up is 99.9% of the battle. And then keep showing up and find a way to insert yourself in that conversation, right? So commit to participating in more leadership and policy conversations. Okay. Invest in developing future leaders, not just current systems, because tomorrow isn't promised, and it's called succession planning, right? It's just the little things. And if you're not a person that is into mentoring, cool. Take your children, your niece, your nephews, your students, somebody you're close to, and help start developing them. Take them in rooms you're in. They're home for the summer. They're home for the winter. And a workshop is coming up. Hey, what you doing on a Saturday morning? Let's go, right? Have those conversations to get them in the room, even if it's over their head. But constantly have those discussions, because one day you won't be, and one day they will continue to be. So it's not just about developing future, it's about investing in developing future leaders, not just current systems. Because here's the truth: poverty disruption requires leadership that moves beyond conversation into coordinated action. I need to make that a t-shirt. Okay, let me say it again. Poverty disruption requires leadership that moves beyond conversation into coordinated action. And that is the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit. You will not be coming in there twiddling your thumbs, eating pastry, having a grand old lunch, eating some cookies, falling asleep with the itis kicking in. No, you coming in from minute one to minute whatever that is, on fire and ready to walk away and be connected, networking, and ready to make it personable in for your life. And leaders willing to collaborate, innovate, and redesign systems becomes architects of prosperity. Boom! Dropping stuff over here. I know it's early. It's okay. You'll thank me later. So join us for the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit 2026, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026 in Baltimore County, Maryland. This is a high impact leadership experience designed for leaders committed to measurable change, economic mobility, and systems transformation. Learn more and register at www.dtdenterprises.com. Click on the From Poverty to Prosperity Leadership Summit, explore what's happening, including our programs for that day. Share this episode with leaders, educators, policymakers, workforce professionals, and change makers ready to move from vision into action, because Agenda 2030 requires more than awareness. It requires transformational leadership that delivers results. So excited that you were able to join me for another wonderful episode. And guess what? Episode 30 is right around the corner. If you are a person that is fighting poverty in your area, you're all about systems, making a difference, you're doing exactly what we're saying in your community, and you want to be a guest, drop a comment below, or drop the comment below. If you are a leader growing from the leadership challenges, let us know how you're doing. If you know a leader out there really doing it, let us know. Thanks for tuning in for another wonderful episode. Rewind this, download it, archive it, take notes, share it in your network, subscribe. Don't forget that subscription button. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, have a phenomenal day. Be blessed, be on fire, and don't take no for an answer.